Уверенно и вперед, да?
Першого дня війни в Україні, як ніколи, ми всі об'єднувалися.
Since the broke out as never before, we are helping our defenders and the Ukrainians who have been victims of the war. Our Charitable Foundation Association of the Jewish religious organizations supply food, medicine, and equipment and gear for the armed forces. Together with other religious organizations who are working for the good of the Ukrainian people, we invite all those who are willing to help Ukraine to join in. The Charitable Foundation of the Union of the Religious Ukrainian Organizations is working for Ukraine and only for Ukraine. We are sure that the war will end with our victory, and there is no other way to follow. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to all those who have made it to today's press conference devoted to the activities of the Charitable Organization, the Union of the Jewish Religious Organization. My name is Mykhailo Zaslavsky, and I'm the founder of the organization. Our organization works for and exclusively for Ukraine. And in spite of the fact that this organization was founded in 2012, we began our main activities since the beginning of the war in order to make sure that I am heard by everybody. Given the fact that Russia unleashed this massacre and war in our native Ukraine, I will switch over to the Russian language to make sure that the Russian language speakers can hear us around the world. Now, in order for you to understand what's going on in reality, since day one of the war, we have been here in Ukraine, and given the locality of our organization, we were based in Bucha region, and we are still here. Since the day one when we witnessed what was going on, I understood that this charity foundation must be galvanized. I was engaged in many good deeds, but unfortunately on our own, it is impossible to win the war. So the Charitable Foundation has joined in the defense of Ukraine. When you are acting on behalf of the Charity Foundation, people know what you are doing. Since the beginning of war, we have delivered for the population, for the territorial defense, for the armed forces of Ukraine, goods worth of millions of dollars and medicines for about 6,000 persons. To the armed forces of Ukraine, we delivered different kinds of gears, helmets, bulletproof vests, etc. You must be aware of the following. What is the difference, an essential difference of the charity foundation of ours? When we thought how the money should be channeled or attracted, we were asked a predictable question. How do you differ from other charities? Of course, we can claim that we are most clever and the smartest and integral, but we chose another path. We have stopped talking about our good deals. As of now, our charity foundation has received $700, a couple of thousand of hryvnias, and a couple of hundreds of euros, and we have not yet taken advantage of them. But what was the way for us to follow? We were ready to talk and started to talk to everybody who is willing to help. And we put as our emphasis the targeted aid. This is the way how the Ukrainian entrepreneurs joined in, and they provided a lot of goods, including the airport in Ozerna, and you will know the place. The guys that were christened the Kyiv Ghost was originated right there, and we were delivering goods in the Bucha region. In the same vein, we preceded our interaction with the Western partners, for good or for the bad. In the Western countries, the system in terms of charity foundations is strictly channeled in Germany, Switzerland, or France. The system is very rigid and there is no other way to follow. That's why we embarked on another path. We were talking to people ready and willing to help. They were sending out their parcels, which were targeted. We received a lorry of medicine masks. To be honest with you, this is not exactly the need for our people in the time of war. Perhaps 300 or 400 masks are very good, but we were asking for what we needed. The armed forces for Ukraine, people who are not indifferent, were providing household goods, toiletries, hygiene products, the instant food for the armed forces. And we are still receiving those parcels from Germany, from France, and they are transferred to the front line. This has enabled us to provide help for those who are in need. At this time, I would like to thank all those, and I bow my head to our president, Mr. Zelensky, who has showed himself as a person who has been able to rally country together. He has been able to show how powerful and independent we are. You know, in a peacetime, it's not difficult to be a president, but a wartime president is something different. And again, I bow my head to him. He is the best president, and I'm sure that we have not seen a president of that caliber so far. This is one of the key points of my presentation. I would like you to remember that and take mental notice of this. Unfortunately, I should also say that there is a number of swindlers, both suppliers and other organizations that are asking a lot of money for low quality goods. I have brought with me part of the bulletproof vest, and I was asked not to show you the part of the bulletproof vest worth $800, which is of low quality. You see, this is what part of the bulletproof vest made in Ukraine. It was hit by the assault rifle, and you see that impact is minimum, and using that plate, our defenders still alive. The worst scenario is when the bulletproof vest worn by the soldier does not protect his life. Unfortunately, we are witnessing such low quality plates provided for the armed forces. The best way to check the quality of the plates in the bulletproof vest is to shoot at it with the K Kalashnikov assault rifle. If you shoot at it and it resists, it's a high quality thing. The same goes for the medicine tourniquets. We are receiving different kinds of those. We should be aware what is the reason for it to use. It's not the first aid kit when we talk about automobiles. Once a soldier is wounded, his blood, the blood must be stopped there, and you have to use these tourniquets. It takes about up to hour to stop blood flowing. As you see, this tourniquet, sometimes we receive tourniquets that are very elastic, and as a result, it doesn't take 30 or 40 minutes for the blood flow to stop, and it leads to lethal cases. This is the practice that we have witnessed, and we have become aware of the consequences. Our foundation has been engaged in different activities, and I have been asked on many occasions about the pseudo volunteers, since sometimes at the border crossing they are deprived of their goods. You see, the aid must be targeted. If it is a targeted aid, it has been asked for by the Ukrainian armed forces or by the authorities, local authorities, where they have their territorial defense units, for example, in the Bucha region. This point must be well regulated. If it is a targeted aid, in that case, the volunteers will not be deprived of their uh, goods. But we are witnessing the so-called pseudo-volunteerism, and they take advantage that this country is in a difficult situation and the war is raging on, and they are trying to profit from it. And you see, there is a better word for it, but I will call them organizations that are not exactly uh, enjoying the integrity credentials. You see, the synagogue in the so-called Galitska synagogue belongs to us, and we have not been dealing with it. But taking into account the war circumstances, we have decided that the Galitska synagogue is very near the railway station, and we wanted to galvanize the activity there. The synagogue is closed, and we want it to function as the normal synagogue should function. According to all Jewish practices, synagogue must be functioning as synagogue. Every building must be used as a synagogue, but a synagogue cannot be used otherwise than for religious purposes. When we entered the territory of that synagogue to give out food supplies and so on, we were doing this for 10 days. On the 25th, we saw some people who claimed that they are owners of the premises of the synagogues. On the synagogue, the scandal erupted. They were the representatives of the local Jewish community. And on this point, I would want to make clear for everybody to hear. As a founder of the Charity Foundation, I'm not interested at all in the rights of the ownership. I am ready to give it to any Jewish community that will be celebrating the Pesach and other Jewish holidays and will be engaged in all the charity activities. At this synagogue, I'm not planning to set up some business activity. I am one of the major, perhaps the only sponsor of the Zhytomyr synagogue, and in no way am I trying to claim that this is my ownership. It belongs to the local community. The community is very strong. Children are being brought up. They have set up the uh, children's home for the parentless children. The same goes for the Galitska synagogue. If it comes down to the fact that at long last they will provide for the religious purposes, that they are engaged in the charity activities, I will give 2 thumbs up to their activities. And I am ready to give it away. I'm not fighting for the ownership rights. A couple of words on the requests that we are receiving. It is with great pleasure that we will cooperate with all volunteer organizations, with all charitable activities, ready to help Ukraine in the first place. And honestly saying and putting it bluntly, not to steal money. You know, I am a fond of making money, but it is time now to help Ukraine rather than to make money. To survive and to win in this war is the first precondition of my activities. As many Ukrainians, I am interested in these activities to save Ukraine. This is our main focus. That's why I invite everybody to cooperate with us, and I will be happy to cooperate in the future. Why am I speaking in Russian? I want to be heard. The information politics is very strong abroad, saying that there is some religious feud going on here in Ukraine. As a representative of the Jewish community, I'm telling you, we are not foes. We are all Ukrainians here in terms of Ukrainian citizens. I want everybody to understand. I enjoy very good rapport with the Orthodox communities, other faith foundations, with the Muslim organizations. Indeed, we are cooperating as one unit. We don't have today with us one of our partners, Slav Muhamedov, who is engaging with us in our charity activities. He is one of the owners of the I.D.Clinics. He is a physician, but in spite of all the religious differences, he is part and parcel of our activities. That's my point. Another point that I would like you to pay attention to. The priorities have changed in terms of humanitarian activities and humanitarian aid. I will tell you why. Foods, apart from the deliveries for the armed forces, of course, it is important, but renovation is at the center of our activities. Last time, on last Sunday, we went to the Borodyanka to the village of Zakhalsko, next to the Warsaw route. What we saw there, of course, is mind-blowing and shocking. It was another evidence of the Russian fascists, what they did and their war crimes. About 30% of people are staying there. There are a lot of people with no place to live in this. I was talking to the elder of the community. He said, we don't need food today. You can bring us some building materials to set up some makeshift living for people, to have roofs of their heads. So I again turn to you with a request to bring in some slates and bricks and everything to raise up new homes. Sometimes we need a little home or a caravan. You should be aware that it's not a commercial project. You know, they brought us a makeshift home worth $60,000. We don't have people able to pay for such a shelter. And I call this pseudo volunteering. When I see such pseudo volunteers, it feels like giving them the, salute with the middle finger. We are united in our efforts, and these people should not be part of our community. This is the main point that I wanted to share with you. I would like to answer all your questions at the end of this press conference. I will introduce to you people present here. Lokshin is a PhD, a person who is one of the activists of the Kyiv Jewish religious community, and perhaps as one of the ideological leaders, not perhaps as a religious leader, but as a spiritual leader. Yulia Gulyaeva is the founder of the equestrian club in the Bucha region. I will tell something she is not likely to say. Her equestrian club has suffered a lot of damage. More than that, their house of her family is no more. It was hit by the MLRS, and luckily she and her husband stayed alive. Thank God Almighty that they are alive. But these things around us, and Chaim Handlin is the Israeli citizen, and he is our volunteer, a person who helps us in a lot of ways in terms of deliveries of goods, of equipment, and delivering on the interaction with world community. He does a lot of things, and he's not seen, and this is the main thing. Why do I want to cover today's activities of our foundation? People should believe and understand that we are doing the good thing. We are not making money on this. This is the main point of this press opportunity for you to understand what we are doing and why we are doing. That's my point so far. I would like, with your permission, to give the floor to Yulia Gulyaeva. Let her highlight what she thinks about what's going on. I'm trying to speak Ukrainian, and I'm sorry if there are some linguistic mistakes. My name is Yulia Gulyaeva. I'm the co-founder of the Equestrian Club, which is based in the Buchansk region in Kyiv Oblast. As you have heard, in the territory of our club, we have casualties, both in terms of human life and of our horses. And these horses are very precious because they are part of the gene fund of Ukraine. We used to host the Children's Equestrian Club, but we have suffered a lot of damage and destruction. You have heard that we were hit by the Russian Grad MLRS. Our main specialist who was a stableman. Unfortunately, he died together with a number of horses. A few horses have been operated on due to the activities of this charity fund. I hope they will be doing all right. I would like to appreciate the work of the Charity Foundation and to Mykhailo Zaslavsky in the first place for the fact that they have helped us in these testing times. They have provided medicines both for people on and for horses, the toiletries, and Mikhailo has also provided us with a place to live in. He has given the bed linen to us, the one that were used by his daughter when we were hiding under the cement plates and we were fired at. It was a terrible time, and we are thankful for him for helping us. When we Ukrainian armed forces, we were visiting different places like Yesnogorodka and Stoyanka and Petrushki, and we were visiting our armed forces on the heavy fighting. When you are driving a car at the speed of 150 kilometers per hour to get some food for your horses, for children's horses or sports horses, no one will dare to do that. And again, I thank you for your efficient help. What is my point? Currently, we are having problems with the way to feed our horses. Of course, we have hay, we have other ways to feed them, but some people are trying to make money on the war. You know, we have suffered so much damage, and we have to turn to some charity foundations to ask not for money, but to ask for haze. You know, sporting horses must be cared for in a very special way. International organizations might help us. We are turning to different organizations in Ukraine. Yes, we received different kinds of help, but we received 20 sacks of muesli. But this is just a drop in the ocean. And I'm pleading and asking you for some ideas of how to help the stables that are in need of help. You understand that in the Bucha district, there are a lot of stables that burned down together with the horses that were there in the Bucha and other villages, and many stables were attacked and horses were just shot. You know, I reiterate, we don't need money. We rather are in need of forage and fodder for our horses. It is very important to organize some volunteer help and aid in caring for those horses. People are afraid to come to our stables because they are afraid that the Russian forces might return. What we can do in return, volunteers will help us, and we will uh, teach them the equestrian art. Once again, I thank everybody who were helping us in salvaging the horse gene fund of Ukraine's horses. Let us be strong and let us be filled with the assurances of our future victory. Thank you. I would also like to add that every generation has its heroes. You see, Mr. Zaslavsky, he is doing so much. He has salvaged so many people, and perhaps they don't know who their savior was. And I am the witness to that. All the initiatives that he has been pioneering, regardless of the religious specialities. We are trying to set up some culture. We are setting up the yeshiva university for people to get some education. Here we are talking about tolerated management in terms of further education. People must be brought up in tolerance culture. You know, sometimes we see people who have been traumatized. As for our foundation, one of the merits of ours is that we are trying to raise the issue of fundraising. This is a very good feature. Everyone can participate in this. There are a lot of rabbis who will tell you how they were helping different communities, including the Central Kyiv Synagogue, where the work of the upbringing of the spiritual culture and helping people with the foods and providing different ratios. This initiative, I think, is targeted towards creating social cultural environment to bring up the cultural awareness. The University of Management have voiced their readiness to cooperate with us to provide curriculum of religious basis. So we will bring up people who are both religious and well educated. I have never tried to grandstand in different communities as part of the Erasmus Plus. I enjoy the status of an expert, but one of the initiatives by Mr. Zaslavsky is to create a cultural uh, environment, the micro-social cultural environment, to bring up a new generation of Ukrainian managers who will be competitive in the European scales. Let us thank him for his initiative, and we are appreciating this. You see, to be here among the journalists and outstanding persons, I am happy to be a cell of such a movement. I am part of the Jewish community for a number of years, and I am trying to respond to all the requests that I receive. Thank you. And thank you personally. One of our volunteers, he is the Israeli citizen. I would like to give the floor to Chaim Handlin. While I'm staying with the Central Kyiv Synagogue, come to know a lot of people, and I know what it feels like to be an authentic patriot. I have been lucky to see what I have seen, and we have joined the efforts of people like Zaslavsky. We have seen the other side of the life that gives you an opportunity to relieve, that you remember through your forebearers, your grandmother and your grandfather, who was fighting in the Second World War and died there. There are tasks that you see in front of your eyes. God Almighty sets goals for you and helps you in terms of giving you people to work with. And I would like to thank Mikhail once again for his participation in the work of the big team of religious leaders working here in Ukraine. I would like to thank the chief rabbi of Ukraine, who heads this powerful effort, including providing of medicines, foods, medical services. there was one person that 15, excuse me, 1,500 people that we took away from the war zone. We didn't discriminate between their religions. And I remember when the stable was hit, and I phoned them and said that we have people in Germany ready to host you. And the owners of those horse stables said we wouldn't go anywhere. We'll stay here. And we have different children that we educate here and provide extra equestrian classes. So we hosted people from Chernihiv region, 20,000 people to be fed, to be located, and you saw people who for days didn't eat hot meal. You understand that you are doing something important. You are approached by the people who are suffering, and you understand that the help comes from God. There is a phrase that a little ray of light disperses clouds of darkness. These people that surround us, Mykhailo, the chief rabbi of Ukraine, hundreds of members of our community are the warriors of light. They make sure that this country is independent. They make sure that we will be proud to say to our children, we withstood this and will be living in a free, independent Ukraine. And again, I thank you for your invitation to participate in today's press conference. To reiterate, we don't need grandstanding. We need one big word, the V word, victory over the enemy who has come to our land to destroy us. Thank you, Chaim. Indeed, these are very good words when you say that we don't need medals. For my money, I don't want any recognition. I've been living all my life in Ukraine. I'm Jewish, and I am the head of the Jewish Foundation, and I'm in love with this country. I believe that I have the right to say that I am a proud citizen of Ukraine. I want this country to flourish. I honestly believe that there are a few things. I don't know why we are talking about European Union. I believe that this is the best country in the world. We are in the middle of Europe. We have all the opportunities to be one of the best countries, if not the best country in Europe. Once we have secured our victory, we should go forward and develop. I am now ready to answer all your questions. Thank you, Ira Yakovenko from Ukrinform. I would like to ask Yulia in the first place. I appreciate all the work you are doing for the horses and with the horses, but I have to ask you, at this point in time, at your equestrian club, how many horses you have there and how many of those have suffered? Prior to war, we had 45 horses, children's horses, sports horses, and privately owned horses. Before war, 10 horses were evacuated, and those privately owned. Now we have 36 heads at the territory. As I mentioned, one horse was killed and 3 were wounded. 2 of those were operated on, and operation was successful. Another question. Of course, there is a cooperation between volunteers and vets. And I know that in the city of Kyiv, there is a university providing education for vets. Have you been trying to cooperate with them? There are a number of cases that we know about. When vets are coming and providing some help, what kind of interaction you enjoy? Do you plan to enjoy their cooperation? Horse veterinary in Ukraine is not very much developed. It's a tragedy. Of course, there are vets ready to come in and help, But when we are talking about bombardments, there is no way someone can help and come to us. We were doing on our own. Shrapnels were removed from the horse bodies. You know, this world is cruel one. No one is ready to work for free. You have to pay for everything, and the money that you have to pay is quite a substantial sum of money. I would like to turn to the founder of the charitable organization. Will you please tell our listeners how to set up charitable foundation? What are the formalities? And most importantly, how do you provide for the safe working conditions? There are a lot of people who say that we are willing to be volunteers, but not everyone understands that the demining process is in progress. In that way, and by such a reckless behavior, they are putting themselves at risk, and they are also putting at risk people that they are trying to help. As for the creation of the volunteer organization, such a body should not be formally organized. You can be a volunteer at every charity foundation. You are welcome. We are striking a deal with you that you're working for pro bono and you commit to do what is needed by Ukraine. As for visiting the unsafe places, in our case, we regularly go to the Bucha district, and Bucha district, as you will know, after all the minings, and there were heaps of things to be regulated, including mined buses, mined armed vehicles, woods, etc. When we go there, we take along either armed officers from the armed forces of Ukraine or the representatives of the local authorities for us to understand where to go, not to get involved in the situation that you have just mentioned. As for the activities of the volunteers, I will tell you this. If you are willing to do something good, you will find the way. The will means the way. So to set up such a volunteer organization, I will be honest and blunt with you. I have spent some time on doing something personally that no one knew about. Were it not for the war, I would not have launched the activities of such a fund. Officially, it is on papers, it is active since 2019. But since the war began, I understood that there must be something done in reality on your own. You cannot carry out all the tasks. You mentioned that many people turn to you with a request not for foods, but for the building materials to restore their houses. In general, what are most pressing areas of volunteer activities? I know about uh, the so-called automobile volunteering, people having their cars try to help. What are the most popular volunteer activities in the Kyiv region, for example? The situation is as follows. There are a lot of volunteers in the Kyiv Oblast, especially in the places where people were abused and physically assaulted. I don't want to go into detail now. After what I have seen in Bucha, you start hating everybody who is Russian. What they committed, in particular in the Bucha districts, physical abuse, rapings, all the ugly things they committed. Hosts of people are now psychologically traumatized, and by when we go to those regions, we take along the specialists in psychiatry. So if the most pressing issue is psychological help and medical help in all possible areas, a lot of areas, I can't keep that out of our talk today. A lot of Ukrainian women, after these um, war crimes committed, rapes, have to undergo medical operations. You cannot express what these scams did. So medical help, psychological aid, and of course rehabilitation, everything that needs to be done for people to restart their normal life. In general, approximately how many volunteers that are working on a constant basis with you, and how many psychologists work with you. We understand that psychological help is most pressing kind of aid today. So far, we have been able to engage 3 psychologists, one from Kharkiv, 2 from Kyiv city, and they come with us to provide psychological aid. Volunteers that will help with us are working they're with us on constant basis, and we have 50 of those. You know, the lack of fuel is very dire problem, and in spite of those issues, we are doing what we are doing. We meet some understanding on behalf of the oil companies, fuel providers. It is very difficult, we understand that, but we seem to be finding very good partners there. You, as far as I can understand, focus your activities in Kiev and Kiev Oblast. Do you provide any humanitarian help in a wider Ukraine, in different oblasts? What are the territories that you help today? And I will tell you what the truth is that we concentrate in the Kiev Oblast, an area that have suffered mostly in the course of war. Partly, we were helping the village of Ozerna in the Zhytomyr region, but mainly we are working in Kiev region. Since when have you been working? You mentioned that you got engaged in these activities since day one. Have you been working since when? 24th of February or when? And what are the other volunteer organizations that you cooperate with? And in your view, what is your need for this is the point for the international journalists to hear. Well, basically, we began working on the 24th of February, on the 25th of February. When everything started on the 24th, we kicked off our work on the 25th. And I will be very clear here. I live in the village of Garaniche. Everything that was happening then was within 2 kilometers from my house. So Garaniche, all the crossroads where fighting was taking place. I saw it firsthand. And unfortunately, I had to participate in them. I didn't leave the place. The only thing I did, given that I have a wife and 2 daughters, I jumped into the car, got them away through the Ukrainian border, and came back on the 25th. And since then, I have been staying here. Respectively, since the war broke out, I have started the functions of my foundation. The charity foundation is needed when it is needed. As they say, a stitch in time saves nine. We know about the foundations that dream of being officially recognized. And I have this question, perhaps that sounds improper. Why for? If you are not officially registered, how will you help? If you are believed, if people believe you, people will help you the way that is happening with us. We receive help from Germany, from France, and we have people in Germany and France who are helping 40 families in France that are helping us in every way possible. People who are not indifferent. They understand that the aid that they will send will not be looted and will not go elsewhere. We have people helping us with product certificates in the Silpo network. Of course, it's not the cheapest way to go, but they did it. The Silpo offered us these food vouchers, and we are able to help both civilians and the armed forces and the territorial defense. And over the last months, we have received vouchers for food worth thousands of hryvnias, and they were targeted to specific categories. That's the main point. You know, there must be a charity foundation, and then there is Almighty God who sees how that charity foundation functions. I want everybody to know, take notice of that. As a way of introduction, I was contacted by volunteers saying that we have received children clothes from Italy. And I told them that I know such people in need in the village of Makariv. And the response was that people received parcels from the Nova Poshta with some milk, and people were charged 100 hryvnias to receive such parcels. And I was contacted by these people who said, what kind of aid is that? Do you resort to the services of the Nova Poshta? If we go through the Nova Poshta services, yes, we employ them, but we pay for their services. I will be honest with you. We cooperate with the Zhytomyr Charity Foundation, and we exchange our humanitarian aid. Of course, Nova Poshta is very efficient, but you have to pay for their services. They don't meet our needs. They will not do it free of charge. So we are paying for their services, not charging those who are recipients of such humanitarian aid. Perhaps this is a generous, general question that has to do with this, what you call quasi-volunteers. These quasi-volunteers are being tracked down. How widespread do you think this phenomenon is in the Kyiv region? You might have met some pseudo volunteers. How widespread they are, and how they have grown in times of war. Unfortunately, there is a black sheep in every family. There are some pseudo volunteers. I don't know how many of them are there. We have seen looters who were pillaging the villages that were burned down. Of course, the Ukrainian military were tracking them down, plus the Ukrainian police. And we'll be honest with you, I have never seen a single Ukrainian policeman in the Bucha region, apart from the territorial defense and Ukrainian armed forces. The police forces were not there. As for the pseudo volunteers, the number of them is unknown to me. Perhaps there are some of them, but the number of them growing, it's a debatable issue. I would like that number to go down. But to put it softly, the fewer black sheep we have in the family, the better. As for the equestrian area, humanitarian aid is coming and is coming big time. But I told you that in spite of the volume sent, the volume received is very different. When I see that the fodder for animals, for horses, is being on sale, what can we talk about here? This is humanitarian aid that is sold. My name is Mohammed, and I am fighting for Ukraine since the 26th of February. I would like to turn to Mykhailo. You said that during the war, you kick-started your work. As a military, I see the problem with the volunteers. There is a red tape, bureaucracy that some humanitarian aid doesn't get to the front line. We have some cargoes coming from Poland and sitting in Lviv, and it doesn't get to the front line. Do we have some state authorities that would help you to get those humanitarian aid to get to the front line? Are there people in Zaporozhye, for example, in Bakhmut? Why would you go there? When what I'm saying is that are there state-run bodies that would facilitate your work? So far, I don't know such organizations. The only option that I see, ones that we have already tried to implement and seems to be working, is this: humanitarian aid must be specifically targeted. You have the specific uh, authority, the customer, the client, either the local authority that wants to receive some aid, and that aid is targeted to that client. This is the case when the procedure is easier. And I've spoken about that. Unfortunately, a number of pseudo volunteers are standing in our way. To get away from pseudo volunteering this is the only way to have the humanitarian aid targeted. I understand the bureaucratic hurdles, but taking that into account, I have the documents that target specific communities. To make my point clear, we are now putting together first aid kits for the military, and military first aid kit is not a simple thing to do. It is a complicated things because you have to find all the items for it, all antibiotics, the other issues, including good tourniquets. We are putting them together with our Zhytomyr branch. And while preparing them to go to the front line, from the first step, we want to make sure that they are received by the soldiers specifically named. I don't want to insult anybody. I don't believe any command, the first aid kit or bulletproof vests. We don't believe anybody in authority. We talk to specific soldiers going to the hotspots, going to the front line. When I hear that in the Vinnytsia region, they need bulletproof vests, and I'm asking what for? For them to showcase the bulletproof vest is needed in the front line, and we are trying to keep that under control. I agree with you. I was talking to people today visiting the front line. And I was there at the front line where we didn't receive anything. We were wearing what we took along when we were leaving our houses. And when we went back to the center, we saw the so-called universal soldiers with good gears and everything. As I come hot-footed from the front line, I think it makes sense to give help and to provide those services to the specific soldiers. My name is Ina, representing Dream UA Charity Foundation. We focus on delivering humanitarian aid to the front line in the Kharkiv and Zaporizhia regions. In the first place, I thank you for your work. We have gone through all the hurdles that you have mentioned. My question relates to the automation of the process. We are searching for partner volunteering activities representing the IT sphere. We have provided the automated procedure software because we are also working with the targeted aid. We have our own logistics supply lines to ensure that no one even dare to say pillage our loads. We want to start working with the QR codes for donors to see the movement to the end client. Have you thought about something in that area? We have medicine specialists working in the warehouses, and we would like to set up some um, training courses because sometimes the soldiers don't know how to work with the tourniquets. So automation of your system of logistics and medical courses. As for the automatization of our procedures, we are thinking about that. We will make sure that everything, every step on the way of our aid will be tracked down. As for the workshops, to the best of my knowledge, we have had such medicine workshops for the soldiers before they go to the front line. I was talking to people that I was delivering aid to, including the vests and the helmets. They told me that they went through such workshops. Of course, it is very urgent, and I think if you do this, this will be very helpful. I'm sure that in 90% of cases of soldiers going to the front line, they don't know how to use and what for to use the tourniquets, for example. Thank you. Our time has expired. Thank you very much and goodbye.